What's up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. Giselle, welcome. How you doing?
Well, thank you. I can't complain too much. What about you, Zach?
I'm doing well. You know, first of all, I really want to say I appreciate you sitting down with me. You're the chief product officer at one of the largest EAPs in the world.
Yeah, and it's really the chief of product inclusion, right? So let's
talk about it.
Yeah, we got a product. We have product people, leaders of product. But then we have this side that is really focused, and my remit is, hey, let's make sure that we are thinking of all people when we're designing our products. That's where I come in.
So let's talk about that. Like, first of all, like, we're going to talk about ADP and we'll talk about the work that you're doing there specifically. But let's talk about Miss Mota first, okay? And you know what I'm saying? Let's get there. So this idea of product inclusion, it sounds fairly nuanced and niche. I'm curious. What led you to this role?
You know, honestly, I'm just going to cut to the chase with you because that's where we're at today. So cutting to the chase, I had a role before I was in this role. And in that role, if I boiled down what I was doing, I was helping executives to implement things like artificial intelligence and think about how machine learning and data analytics and all those things were going to help them be more effective, more efficient, make more money, all of that. But then 2020-ish, like 2019 to 2020 happened. And when the pandemic hit, when all these social injustice and especially the murder of George Floyd, that catalyzed me to say, wait a minute, like all these companies now are starting to make these pledges and they're trying to do things around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But how can I channel my energy into a positive place and really help companies to make a difference, truly make a difference, and to meet their goals at the same time and create a future of work that's truly inclusive? And I'm all about that life. Let's make the future of work a place where I would want to work, where I would want my generations of people to work, where anyone in the whole world should feel safe, should feel like they belong. And that's what I did. So the whole gist of it is that I wanted to help influence where technology was heading so that it would be inclusive. So I wrote up a proposal to the company. I was, bringing this up to leaders in our product teams. And it just so happened that at the same time that I was bringing this up, some leaders in the product were already thinking about this. They're like, have you been in on our meetings? Have you how did you know we were looking for this? Yeah. And it just was a beautiful moment. It was meant to be. And here we are.
Well, I mean, one, I just want to pause and acknowledge, like, you took the initiative there to like imagine a role and then propose that to you. I mean, what was that like in terms of, because I think so oftentimes, especially for Black and brown folks, but frankly with people in corporate America, irrespective of your melanin count, it's hard for us sometimes to kind of challenge the premise, right, that we're engaged, like, oh, well, this is my job. So talk to me about just what was the feeling and the journey of even just being like, I'm going to create and imagine and propose a role. Like, was that nerve-wracking or scary at all?
Rather than being scary, it was more like I was so passionate about this that I needed to balance out my passion and all of the personal feelings that I was having because of the times that we were living in and everything that was going on. I had to balance that with, how can I convey this in a way where anyone who hears this, whether it's a leader in the company, whether it's whoever that I talk to about this, concept, that they would get it and they would rally behind it and they would see the need for it for a business initiative. And I'm like, all right, so it was more than anything. It's like, and I think that's challenging to do. How do you temper sometimes, like, I want to do what's right versus, but I need the business to see that this makes sense for the business for us to do this too, right? And it's like, finding that middle ground actually taught me a lot about myself. It taught me how to go forward with if anything ever happens again, or as things have continued to happen in the world and society. How do I always balance my heart with the mission, the vision, the purpose of an organization, and what we're trying to do for the bottom line, right? And I've been learning that, and I think I've found like a good middle spot. But still, I can't lie to you, the heart still always trumps all of that for me, still to this day.
You know, it's interesting, like to your point about like finding that balance and even like tempering passion within like the context of work to like get the best results for yourself. And of course, as a byproduct for the organization that you work with. You know, what does product inclusion mean? Or rather, what is the point of the intersection of product and inclusion? Like, why should companies care about that? How is that not just another buzzword? And, you know, especially in this season, right? Where we're seeing like these ebbs and flows, and like right now we're in an ebb of a higher level of resistance to things around DEI, quote unquote. Talk to me about what is the so what of product inclusion.
Yeah, the so what matters depending on who you're talking to. So if I'm going to speak at a super high level, I'm not talking to Zach, or you. I think you're going to get it at the level that I get it. But let's take it back to someone who's like, I don't like this DEI stuff. Let's start there. What it means is that we're considering humans. That's what it is. It's to be considerate of human beings. That means if you created a product and it wasn't created with people in mind who were left-handed, and everyone else has to access this product because it's the majority and they're all right-handed people, what happens to the 10% of the global population who's left-handed? You know, are they never supposed to enjoy that product and experience? Are they like they have to struggle through the experience, and et cetera? So we want to create experiences where as many people will use that product. Imagine you're an employer and you want to try to hire the best talent as possible. So you don't want to limit the experience for some people, even if it's unintentional. So product inclusion is just about being considerate of human beings, first of all. Then you start getting into it a little bit deeper and you're like, okay, at a business area, product inclusion means the more we design with more people in mind, the more you can sell to more people, the more clients now you can reach. So this is about that. Now, bring it down all the way through those layers and talk about it from where my heart is. It is about making sure that regardless of whatever aspect make us who we are, whether it is this color of our skin, all the way to, like I said, you might be left-handed, you may have a disability, you may be a veteran, whatever that is, and the intersection of all of those things together, how do we create products that people are going to use in the workplace that create that environment of safety, belonging, like I feel good to work here. Wow, they thought of me. I can use this. It's relevant to me. And then it also extends to one more layer, which is about, for the business or the practitioner, it's about making sure they stay in compliance, making sure that their products are accessible, and making sure that they are not, that they're also providing a great employee experience. That's it for them, right? So it's a lot of things.
It is a lot of things. And like, it's so interesting because whether folks like to acknowledge it or not, there's a strong point of synergy between like inclusion, safety, and return in the market, right? So like when I think about like an example of product inclusion and just like being mindful of like your entire human population, it's like a lot of these tools and recognition software that we continue to see, oh, hey, like some of these tools or these cameras aren't picking up darker skin.
Right.
And that results in like the product not working for them, or you getting hit by a car, like, or by these autonomous vehicles. And so it's like, hey, like not only does this product help and to create like and help you engage larger parts of the market, but it also helps mitigate risk for your brand.
That's right. Another example for what you just said is there was this tool that was being used before the New York law came out about AI and bias for interviewing. Before that, there was this tool that was used dark, or if your skin tone was too dark, according to what it was picking up, it would assign to you worse qualifications on your interview. It would say that you are not good for the job, you're not a good fit, you don't have a good personality, like all this stuff was coming out. And when they found out why certain candidates were getting favored over others when they were the exact same, they started to see that it was because of a skin tone issue with the camera, and it was a problem with the background with lighting as well. Sparing so it's that too. It happens in the workplace too. And I'm glad those regulations have been coming down.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that like when we think about the future of like effective product development and design, as well as just like the leveraging of different generative AI tools, that I mean, really, to your point about regulation, like we're really behind the eight ball in terms of like, hey, what are we doing to create safeguards in place so that we're minimizing harm as much as we can, right? Like that's
minimizing harm and thinking about all people. Again, being considerate. If I had to boil it down, that's what it is. How do you consider all people? You know, there was a Gen AI tool. And by the way, in some of the work that I do, I'm in charge of coming up with the guardrails for generative AI at ADP that have to do with inclusion. So I am everything you just said. I'm like, yep, because we are thinking about that. We're being intentional about how that shows up. So there was a Gen AI tool that you would start putting in a sentence, and it could say 2 men entered, and then fill out the rest of the sentence AI, and it would fill it out. Okay, right. 2 Muslim men entered a room, and the rest of that sentence that the AI imagination of the AI would construct was horrible. And same thing, 2 Black men enter into a room, and the rest of it horrible. Why? Because the same reasons why sometimes the data that's showing up in these generative models of coming up with an image don't include women CEOs or people who are of color who are CEOs. It'll generate everything else but that. It's because we need to take a look at the data. We need to take a look at how words and context matter and how things are being generated in that way. There's a history of human issues that are seeping into these technologies, and we are having to recognize that and deal with those things. So yeah, it's a lot. You're right.
You know, to that point, right? We think about the there was something that happened so relatively recently with Google's generative AI platform, where they were generating images that just were not conducive to like just were highly problematic images, right? Based against what was being inputted into into the tool. And part of me, when I saw that, I was like, ironically, like this is a really good case for inclusion. I know that, and it's interesting too, because like you think about Google historically, like back in like the early 2000s, the mid 2010s, the 2010s, they were like, oh man, everybody wants to work at Google. It's like this. And then they kind of were then slowly but surely seen as like this quote unquote woke place that was just whatever. And so like we've seen like the culture degrade. And so for me, what I've noticed is that it's like, like, and like there's all these like, articles and kind of like exposés on Google and their culture right now. And for me, I looked at that and I just said, man, I wonder like what their inclusion strategy was when it came to developing this product, creating guardrails, and then also like just gathering inputs and getting ongoing feedback for continuous improvement. And so like that leads me, when I think about your role at ADP, like practically speaking, because to your point, and thank you for the reminder that you're not the chief product officer, you're the chief product inclusion officer. So like talk to me about what that means and how you and your team interact with the product team in a way to make to support inclusive product design.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta address what you just said a moment ago about that company and what happened. So for the audience, as well as what happened there have been so many cases where AI will say, hey, generate an image for me, again, of a CEO. And everything that it'll generate is, like white men. Anyone else basically gets excluded. There have been multiple examples over the past several years since generative AI has been creating images that there's that issue of underrepresentation. With what you mentioned as the example was I call it an overcorrection. What happened there? It's an overcorrection because what was happening is that historically, again, these models don't include representative data. It doesn't include Black CEOs and this and that, right? It's not including that. What this one did is that anytime anyone tried to put anything in, it would only show you Black and brown and this and that. It was like an overcorrection, which is interesting. And I think it brings up really good points on when we are designing, we cannot go either way because either way is going to create a problem. What is representation? Representation is everybody. And so when we start thinking about the always there's an underrepresentation that we need to focus on, and that's a huge issue. But then this other thing to only cater to the underrepresentation and not do it for like in a way that makes sense for all is an issue. By the way, I was going to write a blog about this because the interesting piece, and I'll only share this with you, Zach. This is off the top of my head, but it's so funny to have been following the social media and the comments that people were making about that case, because people were saying things like, this, you see how political this has become? Like, you see how this is? Because, you know, there can't be ever a generation of an image of a pope who's Black. Or there can't be this. Now I'm like, well, actually, historically speaking, there have been Black popes.
Right. Right.
And if you keep on looking at different examples like that, there have been, although there hasn't been a lot of that data set, but there is definitely people who have looked a certain way in these, and people are complaining. It's like, you got to actually do a little bit of human introspection and just read and do some research, because you will find that the things that you're getting a little offended about, that it's not the reality. It really was the reality. You just weren't aware of how diverse, you know, that was. But so to your question, part of what I do with the teams is they come to me with many use cases about, hey, this is what we're going to create in a product experience. What do you think about this? How do we make this inclusive? It could be anything from when you're, you know, applying to a job, looking at the job description. How do we make this more inclusive? Hey, if we're going to put fields of somebody to self-identify themselves in the workplace, what should those options be? Like right now, we're expanding race and ethnicity options because in most cases, you know, those EEOs options, like, and with this, you know, all these government forms typically have been really limited. What if you're mixed race? What if you're Black and white or Black and Asian? And like, you should be able to pick those things. And still companies should be able to come into compliance for whatever reporting is required. But it's about being considerate of all people, right? And so that's what happens. We work on, there's about 200 products or so. We have set everything from benefits, retirement, payroll, HR, you name it. And all of these different functions now are pausing in their work and they're saying, how do we make this more inclusive? And that's where I come in the support of the teams, and we work together to accomplish that. It's a big task, but that's
it's huge, because I think about, so it's like ADP, you kind of earlier we were talking about in terms of the fact that ADP really exists as a platform and tool and resource to, I don't want to understate it, right? But hundreds of thousands of organizations around the planet, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's not like you're an entity just to yourself. You're an entity that then provides a resource to other organizations.
Correct. And right? All business sizes as well.
And all business sizes, right? And so like operating as an EAP, and oftentimes like as an extension of an HR team or as that HR resource for an org, mm-hmm. like that's huge. You know, when I think about like product design, when you think about like just going through your due diligence of just developing products, what does it look like to like double and triple check before we press mm-hmm. publish on that product, right? So it's like, okay, like what are the guidelines to make sure this is accessible, this is you know, this is beneficial to these users? And then also I think like part B, right, if I can add to this big old question, is what does it look like to measure the impact of said product inclusion work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For us as well. So some of these answers are works in progress. Okay. But I would say that part of what it looks like is from the very beginning, getting the diverse input and the mindsets across the team. So we've had to develop and take time to develop champions across all of these products, all of these functions. So we have people who are literally data scientists, engineers, coders, like software engineers, like all these different people who deal then with the product marketing side, even all these, we have champions across all of these spaces, and we've taken time to build that and educate them on what it means to design with inclusion in mind and develop with inclusion in mind. So we've done guides. So I would also encourage anyone out there who's listening and you want to start this at your company, like develop a guide, give people resources and education. What does it mean? What is inclusive language? What does it mean to think about like coding in a way that's more inclusive, or what aspects do you look at when you are thinking about inclusion? Like, who is the potential people left out or behind, or the aspects of people? Like, that could be anything from religion, culture. It could be again, are they left-handed? Is it a gender? Is it race and ethnicity? Like, what are the aspects that you want your organization or the people creating your products to keep in mind as they're designing? So part of the other answer to this is to ensure that like in the processes, every touch point of the product before it goes out, there has to be these checkpoints. So it should be from the beginning that when we create a requirement, like what I do is we create requirements about what we're going to make across maybe all products to make for all these to be inclusive. It could be anything, like we did preferred and chosen names that we didn't have that before, right? So many products had to implement that. We gave them the direction and the guidance on how to do that. But then it can get to a particular product, and that's where it gets more nuanced, where not everybody's going to do the same thing because you're in analytics, or you're in talent.
Right.
And then finally, I'd say that like those checkpoints are things that we got to create the guardrails, and then they have to be embedded in a process. Wherever the process checkpoints are that somebody has to go to maybe submit a use case, approve something for final like execution to go to market. At all of those steps, there has to be, did you check these off that this was inclusive, right? That you went through this inclusive check, so that we're creating that and it's embedded into the cycle of product development, right? So we're still fleshing on some of these things out that I'm mentioning to you, but that it has to be like that. It can't just be one and done. It has to be like, right, let's check here. Let's have our champions set up. Let's have the resources where people can access. And I think that's it.
I love this idea of the product champions and product inclusion champions. And I really don't believe if you're just strategically, like to the point you said earlier, what we talked about at the kind of the top of this conversation around like there's safety and risk mitigation to like there's go to market implications to you being inclusive. But like, it's kind of like, if you're not really being inclusive in your product design and development, then like, are you like, how effective are you at building products, period? Right. But when I think about this work, the idea of a champion or champions or a champion network, that's critical because every day people are the people who are in these spaces, they're thinking about this work all the time. And so it's not enough just for the chief product officer to be floating around and sprinkling their magic on this and that and the third. It's really critical that the people who are actively in the work, who sit at this intersection of imagination and technical ability, are also working and thinking inclusively about, hey, like when I build this thing, because at a certain point, right, like depending on whatever the design is, right, like whatever the product may be, but if it's something more, if it's oftentimes it's ADP, it's probably gonna be some type of software. So like, how beneficial would it be for there to be inclusive thinking, like at the very beginning of the development, writing the code, or like thinking about like just the very building blocks of that thing. It's much more powerful if one was to apply inclusive thought and, to your point, consideration of all human beings early, rather than like on the tail or back end and be like, oh, did we think about this thing? Because then what could happen is your product team goes, oh, we didn't. And then they try to apply like a patch or a hot, like a hot patch or fix to it. And so you have something that kind of is, or whatever, it might be okay, but it could have been so much more. And then I think to your point earlier with Google, and it's like this quote unquote, to your language, overcorrection. Like, the reason I think my educated guess, coming to somebody who worked in products,
allegedly, we're gonna do whatever you about
allegedly. Let me sprinkle some allegedlys over that. So my guess is allegedly they probably weren't being inclusive the whole time. And so then on the back end they were like, oh shoot, we gotta do something. And so then they tried to just kind of do something quick. And so then at the back end, now you got Black Nazis on your images. It's like, what are you doing? This makes no sense. So, as I think about your role and to your point about things being a work in progress, and this being like an ongoing journey.
Yeah, it's a journey.
It's a journey. What are you most excited about as you think about your role today, especially in this market, Giselle? To be honest, like, I don't know. Like every time I see like anybody right now, it seems like with a title of with any type of thing that sounds like they're helping marginalized people, it's like they be getting up out of here. So you're still at ADP. Talk to me about what you're most like excited about, what you're looking forward to, what you're most hopeful for.
I'm most excited about the things that don't get a platform to talk about, or the things that don't get highlighted and published in an interview or things like that. And it is like those little moments. You know what? This is the Zach. You're making me say things for the first time on here. So one of the things that I've done, and I've never shared this before, but I keep a file of little comments that people have shared with me that are things like, Giselle, the reason why I get up every day and I'm so proud to be a part of, like, one of the big reasons I love to work here is because of the work that's being done with this. And I'm so proud to be a part of that, they'll tell me. Or people will tell me, I didn't know about this. I never designed like this. I've been a designer for X amount of years and I never thought about these kind of things. I get it. I see it. It's that. Because the more that we can like get people to just be more considerate of others, you know, and it's not natural to us, because what comes natural to us all is our own life, our own parameters, you know, the people we surround ourselves with, our lives, right? And that's natural. But to think about someone else's experiences doesn't really come natural. But and I'm seeing that the work of this alone is doing that. We get little things sometimes from our clients and saying how much this meant to them. We just had a client the other day on a major stage, thousands of people were there. And they said that one of the main reasons why they really loved working with us is because now they're able to reach out to their employees and they have a place to recognize them by their names, the names that they choose to be called, the pronouns that they choose to be called, and the gender identities and all these other things. That means that to that organization. Whereas in another organization, maybe it's a whole nother set of things that matter to them. And that's cool. You know, I'm excited about the ability to make a ripple effect that's positive in people's personal lives and then in how they engage and move around in the world. And that ultimately is going to culminate into a positive future of work. That's what I'm excited about.
That's incredible, Giselle. Now, look, the last thing I wanted to talk about is what happened off mic. You know what I'm saying? So I called you because we were trying to coordinate. So we had to jump on.
What happened off mic? What you about to tell these people? Yes.
So we're trying to coordinate. We typically use Squadcast. Now we're on Zoom. This is not really an ad for either, but I just want to, I'm giving a little bit of peek behind the curtain. Anyway, you picked up the phone. You was talking to me. You know, yeah. I want to talk to you about the fact that you have a chief in your title, right? So you are a senior executive, right, at a global brand.
Only a senior leader at the company. I'm not part of the executive suite per se, but yes, go ahead.
You're a senior leader at a global brand. You sit in a space, right, where there aren't a lot of Black and brown folks, certainly Black women. How important is it for you? Because what I said to you on the phone was, thank you for not putting on that little goofy voice that a lot of executives that we talk to Living Corporate be doing. And y'all know who y'all are. I love y'all. But it's just me and you, baby. You ain't got to do that over here. You know what I'm saying? That's what I be trying to tell. I'm talking to them. I'm telling them right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, y'all be doing that. And it's like, yo, it's just me. Like nobody's about to pop out from behind, from like over here. Like, it's okay. So you show. I could just tell from me. It's like, oh, you like a real one. So talk to me about how important it is for you to show up authentically wherever you're at, including at your job.
Extremely important, Zach. Look, I cannot be split people. I have to be who I am. Who you see I am right now is how I talk to my family, how I show up with my friends. It is how I show up at work. It's how I show up everywhere. It is just me. And sometimes, you know, it's funny. I was on a stage in London recently. And, you know, it was like a global audience. And I was up there and I was talking about, to your point about, you know, skin tone and the importance of what that is in technology, like facial recognition and all these things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know, and like me, you know, because I was like one of 3 people in the audience that my eyes could see that looked like me. And then I talked about the crown act. I talked about my hair. I was like, you know, I can only be me. And I think it's so important. The more we represent with our true selves and our full selves, the more permission we give other people to do the same thing. And the more normal we're going to make it, that, hey, look, there are Giselles out here. We need to design products for Giselles out here. There are whoever's out here. We need to create with these people in mind. If we keep trying to blend and be something that we're not showing that there needs to be space for people like us. I need hair products, I need people to understand me and the things that I have to say and what I want to convey sometimes. That is unique to me and to people like me. And so, yeah, it means everything to me. It means everything to be authentic.
Well, Giselle, look, I have to say, I'm so glad you were able to stop by today. We had a really good conversation. The thing I really hope that folks take away there are a few things I will hope folks take away.
Yeah.
But for the corporatist out there, the executive leader, give us like 3 reasons why they need to care about product inclusion.
All right, that real quick, I'll tell you. One, corporates out there, the changing workforce is demanding that. In the next few years, actually, the global workforce is moving away from just being a US-centric and wherever we are today to being more about Africa, more about Asia, more about all these groups. And you know that the generations that are coming into the workforce now and who are coming into leadership positions, they're millennials, they're Gen Z. We're seeing this happen. What do these people care about? How do they want to be seen? How do they relate in the world? We need to keep relevant. If you want to hire and attract and retain good talent, you need to think like this. And if you want to be profitable, you need to think like this. So those are the things that I would say as far as be relevant, stay timely with all of these things, recognize who the demographics and how the demographics are changing, and stay with it.
Giselle Mota, Chief Product Inclusion Officer at ADP. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Upcountry. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.